It began as an ordinary evening in Panama City, the kind that sinks into humidity and the quiet hum of insects as daylight retreats. But that night, something extraordinary broke through the calm. A group of teenagers exploring near a drainage tunnel beneath a small bridge stumbled upon something that would leave the world speechless, a creature that defied every known category of life. At first, they thought it was a joke. The boys were filming, laughing, daring each other to approach the dark opening that echoed with dripping water. But as their flashlight beams cut through the tunnel, the laughter stopped. There, crouched against the concrete wall, was a pale figure. Hairless, flesh glistening, limbs coiled unnaturally close to its torso. Its skin shimmered like something not entirely alive, almost translucent. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then one of them whispered, "What is that?" The creature twitched. Its body moved, not in a way any animal would, but as if it were trying to remember how to move. The boys panicked. Rocks were thrown. Shouts filled the tunnel, and in a frenzy of fear and confusion, they attacked. When it was over, the being lay motionless in the mud. They dragged it out into the open, filming everything with trembling hands. The video was grainy but unmistakable. The pale humanoid form, long-limbed, featureless, and disturbingly human. Within hours, the footage spread like wildfire. Panama's local news outlets picked it up, calling it the Golem of Cerro Azul. But as global attention poured in, something strange happened. The original video vanished from most websites. Re-uploads were flagged, taken down, or mysteriously corrupted. Only fragments remained. Blurred screenshots, a few still images, and terrified witness statements from the boys who claimed they saw it move again, even after it was dead. Days later, local authorities arrived and reportedly removed the creature's body. They offered no explanation, only stating that it had been examined and disposed of. But whispers began to circulate that the body had been transferred to a nearby U.S. military facility. Researchers and skeptics clashed online. Some claimed it was a deformed sloth. Others insisted it was a government experiment gone wrong. But then, more footage appeared. Clear, steady, and recent. This wasn't the same creature. This one was alive and growing. A new video, reportedly filmed just weeks ago near the same region, shows what appears to be the same type of being, but with a terrifying difference. The limbs are developing. You can actually see them forming beneath the skin, twisting, reshaping, like something undergoing a metamorphosis. The internet erupted again, this time louder than before. Analysts slowed down the footage frame by frame, enhancing shadows, stabilizing angles, comparing it with the 2009 Panama encounter. Every match was uncanny. The skin texture, the shape of the skull, the way the creature seemed to breathe, it all aligned. If this was a hoax, it was decades in the making. But if it wasn't, then something else entirely is happening beneath the surface of Panama. Something evolving, hidden, and disturbingly intelligent. Some local fishermen swear they've seen the same pale figure crawling near the mangroves late at night. One even claimed it looked at him, its face slowly reshaping, the jaw shifting like it was learning to mimic human expression. And here's where it gets darker. A few biologists who privately studied the old photographs now believe the being S tissue showed unusual regenerative properties. Not decay, but growth. Meaning whatever they found under that bridge in 2009 might not have died at all. By the time scientists began revisiting the 2009 Panama case, the world had already moved on to other mysteries. But a small circle of biologists, digital analysts, and ex-military researchers kept digging. Not because they believed in aliens, but because the evidence didn't make sense. One of them was Dr. Elisa Romero, a genetic biologist from the University of Panama. She had received a private copy of the original footage years ago, passed through several hands. When she opened the file, what she saw froze her. The timestamps didn't match public uploads. There were missing frames, entire sections where the creature appeared to be moving before the teenagers even arrived. In one frame, the being is crawling from the tunnel wall itself, not the floor. Its body appears half-emerged, as if it were coming through the concrete. The surface ripples around it, and for a moment, the skin pattern of the creature seems identical to the wet rock texture behind it. Romero's conclusion was simple, yet terrifying. This thing wasn't born here, it was manifesting. She began analyzing the pixel data, looking for inconsistencies, compression artifacts, anything that could prove it was CGI. But the more she studied it, the clearer it became. The creature's surface reflected real light sources in real time. Whatever it was, it had mass. Then came the tissue sample. A year later, a fisherman from Cerro Azul brought something to a local hospital. He said he found it floating near the waterway. A pale chunk of flesh, hairless and rubbery, still warm. Initial tests revealed something alarming. Its cell structure wasn't consistent with any known species. The tissue contained trace elements of marine DNA, amphibian enzymes, and human-like mitochondrial strands. When the report reached Romero, she immediately connected it to the creature. But before she could publish her findings, her lab was raided. Computers were seized, samples confiscated, and she was silenced under a confidentiality clause. Her final note, leaked months later, read, "It's adapting. Not dying, adapting. The sample is responding to saline exposure, and under UV light, it expands. It's growing." The new video from 2025 reignited everything. In it, the creature is no longer hairless. Faint outlines of tissue filaments extend from its shoulders and arms. Some describe them as proto-limbs, translucent appendages that twitch as though they're learning to move independently. Frame-by-frame analysis shows the being's ribcage expanding unnaturally, as if its organs were rearranging. What's worse, the footage includes sound. A wet, rhythmic pulse, similar to a heartbeat but slower, heavier. When amplified, it resembles a sonar frequency. Marine experts confirmed it doesn't match any local fauna, but it's eerily close to recordings taken near deep-sea trenches where submersibles have detected unidentified biological echoes. Could this thing be connected to something aquatic? Some speculate the creature might have originated from beneath the Panama Canal system, one of the deepest and most complex artificial waterways on Earth. During construction, thousands of unknown species were displaced, their ecosystems altered forever. But there were also rumors among workers of white forms seen moving through flooded tunnels during night shifts. Those accounts were dismissed as exhaustion-induced hallucinations until now. The latest video was allegedly filmed by a hydro engineer named Carlos Vega. He was performing maintenance near a restricted drainage gate when his drone camera captured movement near the waterline. At first glance, it looked like debris, but when he zoomed in, the object moved against the current. Seconds later, a pale head surfaced, followed by long arms that appeared half-formed, dripping with translucent film. The entity's head tilted upward, and in the reflection of its eyes, Vega saw the red drone light flicker, meaning whatever it was looking directly at him. Vega released the footage anonymously, but digital fingerprint analysis later tied it to his personal cloud. 2 days after that discovery, he was reported missing. His phone was found at the site, submerged in shallow water, still recording. The last frame shows ripples approaching the camera, then static. Since then, the Panamanian government has denied any ongoing investigation, claiming the video is a digital fabrication. But people who have seen the raw footage disagree. One marine biologist in Panama, who spoke under anonymity, said she was called to examine a marine organism of unknown type in a restricted facility. She described it as pulsating, with partially formed limbs that seemed to move in response to sound vibrations. She said something she'll never forget. It wasn't moving randomly. It was listening. If that's true, it means the entity is not only alive, it's aware. And if it's listening, then it knows we've found it again. By the time Vega's footage began circulating online, the Panamanian government had already entered silent lockdown. Drone restrictions were abruptly enforced across the canal region. Independent journalists attempting to reach the site were stopped at military checkpoints. Officially, it was described as a hydraulic contamination event. But locals near the restricted zones began reporting something different. Vibrations. They said that on some nights just before midnight, the ground would hum softly, like a distant turbine deep below the earth. Dogs refused to go near the water. Fishermen complained of nets being ripped apart, and entire schools of fish disappeared overnight. It wasn't long before whispers of Project Aqua 13 resurfaced. The origins of Aqua 13 trace back to the early 1980s. A covert biotechnological experiment funded jointly by U.S. and Panamanian intelligence agencies. At the time, the Panama Canal Zone was still a strategic stronghold for American operations in Central America. The official cover story described the project as a biological water purification initiative. In reality, it was an attempt to study aquatic regenerative organisms discovered in the canal Ajas lower chambers, organisms that seemed capable of self-repair at a cellular level. According to a declassified memo from 1991, scientists under Aqua 13 were experimenting with cross-genetic stimulation, blending marine tissue with human DNA to accelerate wound healing. The test subjects, amphibious life forms unknown to science, were found living in flooded maintenance shafts, feeding off chemical waste and algae. They displayed one horrifying ability: rapid limb regeneration, even after complete detachment. One surviving researcher, identified only as Dr. M, later testified under anonymity that several containment breaches occurred. The hybrids escaped into the drainage network, forcing U.S. personnel to seal multiple canal tunnels permanently. The operation was covered up as hydraulic stabilization work. If the Panama creature from the 2009 video was one of those experimental organisms, or a descendant, then the recent footage might not be an alien discovery at all. It might be something we created. In late 2024, an encrypted file was posted to an obscure data-sharing forum under the name The Canal Lives. Inside were coordinates, engineering diagrams, and a disturbing series of classified memos. One document described the recovery of a biological specimen exhibiting uncontrolled regenerative growth. The memo warned that its cells remained active even after incineration, leading to unexpected tissue reformation under moist conditions. That single phrase, unexpected reformation, was underlined 3 times. Independent analysts matched the coordinates from that file to a decommissioned wastewater tunnel near Cerro Azul, the same region where the teenagers encountered the creature years earlier. If those locations truly align, it would mean the entity from 2009 never died. It merely retreated underground. In early 2025, satellite images captured unexplained heat signatures beneath the canal's lower lock system. The readings were strong enough to indicate a biological mass, one that was expanding. The pattern looked like a network of veins stretching through the tunnels. Engineers dismissed it as a mapping glitch, but thermal analysts found that the heat signatures moved. Slowly, but definitely moving. The movement corresponded with the time intervals of the electrical blackouts reported in nearby towns. Every time the lights flickered, the heat mass appeared to pulse, as if reacting to the power surge. It was as though something beneath the canal was feeding off energy itself. When the video of the limb-growing entity leaked online, that pattern matched perfectly with the thermal readings. The creature wasn't dying. It was evolving, responding to the environment above it, perhaps even learning from it. Soon after the leak, multiple anonymous sources confirmed that a joint U.S. PCU-Panama task force was quietly reactivated. Their purpose: containment and study of regenerative biomaterial in subaquatic environments. In plain language, they were going hunting. But something strange happened. Within days of the operation's start, local residents reported unmarked boats entering restricted waterways under the cover of night. By dawn, they were gone, leaving behind oily residue and a chemical odor so strong it made people sick. The next day, the humming under the ground stopped completely. No official statement was released, but a former engineer from the operation, interviewed under voice distortion, gave a chilling statement. "We sealed the chamber, but it wasn't empty. It was waiting. It touched the hull from the inside. The metal bent like it was alive." He claimed one of the divers had surfaced screaming before being pulled back underwater by something unseen. The official report listed him as lost during operation. But when the diver's oxygen tank was later recovered, it had been crushed inward, not outward as it would have been from pressure. Even more unsettling were the digital anomalies. Every surveillance drone sent into the lower canal tunnels returned with corrupted footage. Static, white noise. But embedded in the static were rhythmic pulses, repeating sequences of light and sound that some believe form a pattern. Cryptologists discovered that when the sound is slowed down and visualized on a spectrogram, it forms a wave-like symbol resembling the human spinal structure, or something trying to mimic it. It's almost as if the entity is attempting to communicate. At this stage, one question became unavoidable. If the creature truly was a result of Aqua 13's genetic manipulation, what was the original organism they used as a base model? A classified document from 1986, unearthed by investigative journalists, referred to Subject Alpha 9, described as an aquatic vertebrate capable of limited mimicry, retrieved from submerged volcanic caves. No further description was included, only a note. Responds positively to frequencies between 19 to 22 Hz. Exhibits limb regeneration after injury. Do not expose to organic light stimuli. When compared to Vega's 2025 footage, analysts noticed that the entity reacted most violently when the drone light flashed red, the same frequency range used in early sonar beacons. Was the light waking it up? Or was it recognizing something it had seen before? The implication is haunting. The creature might not be an alien invader from another world, but rather the remnant of a failed experiment. A being that once had human DNA, and now it's learning to become whole again. When Vega's footage began spreading across encrypted forums, mainstream platforms moved swiftly to remove it. Within 48 hours, nearly every upload of the video had been taken down for graphic or misleading content. The official explanation cited AI-generated media, though metadata analysis proved the file predated the earliest AI deepfake markers. Still, by then, the damage was done. Millions had already seen it. The video ignited global debate. Researchers, skeptics, and conspiracy communities all clashed over what the footage truly showed. Some saw marine mutation, others an alien organism, and a few called it proof of human tampering gone wrong. But the most chilling reaction came from within the scientific community itself. In late March 2025, a coalition of independent biologists and digital forensics experts from Chile, Germany, and Japan convened virtually to analyze the footage frame by frame. They discovered something almost impossible. Within the creature's translucent skin, faint patterns were visible. Not random veins or tissue lines, but repeating geometries. One pattern resembled a sequence of hexagonal shapes, each aligned in a way identical to the structure of synthetic biofibers used in government nanotech prototypes. That detail couldn't be coincidence. It suggested that whatever this creature was, it wasn't naturally formed. Shortly after the group published their preliminary findings on a private academic board, the thread disappeared overnight. Within a week, 2 members reported their university accounts being locked under national security restrictions. One of them, Professor Takeda from Kyoto University, left a cryptic final message before going silent. "It's not what we made. It's what we woke up." Meanwhile, strange things began happening across Panama. Locals living near the canal system described seeing white fog creeping over the water at night, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Some said they saw ripples forming without wind, perfect circles expanding outward, as if something large was stirring beneath the surface. Fishermen spoke of losing entire nets to unseen forces. One claimed his motorboat engine died the moment his sonar started echoing back two separate frequencies, one natural, one intelligent. Government patrols increased. Black SUVs appeared in remote villages. Locals were told to stay indoors after dark. At the same time, U.S. intelligence agencies began quietly contacting journalists who covered the 2009 story, warning them not to revisit the subject. A reporter from El Siglo, Panama, who tried to publish an article linking the new footage to Project Aqua 13, vanished during a weekend trip. Her car was found abandoned near Gamboa Bridge, doors locked, headlights still on. And yet, fragments of her draft survived on a shared drive. In it, she wrote, "If it's growing limbs, then it's learning structure, maybe even form. The next stage of evolution won't crawl from space. It will rise from our mistakes." By mid-2025, multiple countries had reportedly issued private alerts to their coastal monitoring agencies. Navy sonar arrays across the Pacific began detecting unidentified low-frequency pulses. Rhythmic, almost biological. The signals seemed to originate near deep-sea trenches, where no known submersible could reach. These pulses shared a unique acoustic signature, the same one embedded in the Panama static recordings. It was as if multiple entities were responding from across the globe. In one leaked naval report from Colombia, operators noted strange electromagnetic distortions occurring during coastal surveillance. Instruments would spike briefly, then go dead. And a few seconds later, sonar picked up something massive moving below. The objects would appear for mere moments before vanishing completely. A diver who worked on a cable maintenance crew off Panama's coast described something unforgettable. He said the water turned unnaturally warm around him, like entering a living current. Then, from the darkness below, a shape appeared. Vague but human-like, with limbs unfurling in ways no natural creature could. "It looked at me," he said. "Not like a fish, like a person trying to remember how to be one." His story was never officially recorded. The company he worked for denied the incident entirely. But his helmet camera footage, leaked briefly on an underground forum, showed faint movement. A pale figure drifting in the gloom, limbs extending in slow, deliberate motion. It wasn't swimming, it was walking. Then came the blackout. In May 2025, the entire Central Canal Zone suffered a sudden power failure lasting over 6 hours. Security feeds went offline. Emergency communications were jammed. When systems finally rebooted, something disturbing surfaced. Dozens of CCTV files had been replaced by blank static, except one. In the surviving feed, a technician can be seen walking through a control corridor, flashlight trembling in his hand. The sound cuts in and out. Then, for less than 2 seconds, a pale silhouette passes across the frame. It doesn't move like an animal. It glides with long, thin limbs dragging against the walls, leaving wet streaks behind. Moments later, the technician drops the light and the video ends. Government response was immediate. The facility was shut down for electrical rehabilitation. Workers were relocated. But independent analysts who accessed the security data remotely found traces of audio corruption. Specific frequencies embedded in the static that, when decoded, formed what appeared to be a pattern of breathing. It wasn't mechanical interference. It was alive. Scientists across the world began debating what this meant. Some argued it was evolution accelerated, a byproduct of human interference with deep-sea DNA. Others warned it might be the first stage of something bigger, a new species adapting to coexist with our technology, learning from our environment, perhaps even using it as a medium to grow. In August 2025, an anonymous whistleblower uploaded a short file labeled Hydroform Activity Panama Sector 5. It showed thermal scans of the Canal's lower region, the same signature as before, but now it had spread. The shape was unmistakable. 5 distinct heat zones, each pulsing separately, as if multiple organisms were now moving through the tunnels. Every few minutes, the signals synchronized, 5 heartbeats merging into one. That's when the file abruptly cut off. By the time the hydroform activity files began spreading, fear had taken hold. Forums and underground research boards lit up with one repeating phrase: "It's no longer contained." Satellite imaging teams monitoring the Panama Canal noticed something they couldn't explain: subtle shifts in the canal's sediment layers, like something tunneling beneath. In the span of just 3 months, those movements spanned nearly a kilometer. Whatever was moving underground was enormous, or multiplying. Publicly, officials remained silent. But privately, the world's intelligence networks were exchanging encrypted warnings. One report from the Joint Biological Response Unit, JBRU, stated that the Panama anomaly demonstrates adaptive and parasitic behavior consistent with non-terrestrial resilience. And in other words, the entity wasn't dying. It was learning. Rumors surfaced of black helicopters landing near the Cerro Azul Basin at night, carrying sealed containment tanks marked only with the symbol of a coiled helix, the same insignia used in Aqua 13's archived documents. Local fishermen began finding strange jelly-like residue washed ashore, translucent strands that dissolved under sunlight but glowed under UV. Then came the disappearances. Over a span of 6 weeks, multiple canal maintenance workers went missing. The official story attributed it to occupational hazards, drownings, equipment malfunctions, accidents, but rescue divers reported no bodies, no debris, not even torn clothing, just silence beneath the water. One diver, speaking anonymously, described something unnatural. The water felt heavier. It pulled at you like the current wasn't coming from below but from inside. We saw light, faint, white, like something breathing under us. He never returned for a second dive. Days later, security footage leaked showing one of the missing technicians entering a service tunnel at 2:17 a.m. Behind him, faint movement can be seen. Something long, fluid, crawling along the wall. Not in pursuit, but as if shadowing him. The camera flickers, the man turns, and for a split second the frame captures a humanoid silhouette, limbs distended, skin slick and glassy. Then, total blackout. The footage was immediately confiscated. The facility director who confirmed its authenticity resigned the next morning and left the country. The Panamanian government soon issued a complete information blackout. Military checkpoints were reinstated, and aerial drones were grounded. Entire regions along the canal were declared off-limits due to hydrochemical contamination. Locals called it something else: La Zona del Eco, the Echo Zone. And there's a reason for that name. At night, residents living near the restricted perimeter began hearing voices. Not random sounds, familiar ones. One woman swore she heard her late husband calling her name from the forest, the exact tone and pitch he used when alive. Another reported her son hearing her voice whispering from the canal even while she stood beside him. Acoustic analysts later confirmed something impossible. The recordings of these echoes contained frequency imprints that matched known human voices from unrelated missing persons cases. It was as though the entity, or entities, were reproducing sound patterns it had absorbed. This changed everything. If the Panama being was capable not only of physical regeneration but auditory mimicry, then it was no longer an instinct-driven creature. It was an intelligent organism learning to communicate. Experts began calling it a hydroform, a biosynthetic life form adapted to water and flesh alike, capable of merging environmental data into its growth cycle. One scientist compared it to a neural network, evolving through exposure. It doesn't imitate life, he said. "It learns it." Then, the next event shattered every illusion of safety. On June 11, 2025, all monitoring systems in the Panama control grid went offline simultaneously at 03:22 a.m. A massive vibration was detected beneath Lock 3 of the Miraflores system. For a full 8 seconds, seismic instruments registered a rhythmic pulse, heartbeat intervals exactly 62 beats per minute. Then, silence. When maintenance crews finally inspected the tunnels, they discovered something horrifying. Concrete walls had softened, as if melted from within. Toolboxes and metal beams appeared partially fused into the structure, their edges warped and organic-looking. Deep within the chamber, a circular imprint stretched across the floor, perfectly smooth, with a faint biological residue resembling skin cells. DNA analysis was inconclusive. The sample contained both marine genetic markers and human mitochondrial strands. That's when the theory shifted. Some now believed the Panama Entity was not trying to attack humans at all. It was absorbing them, incorporating their biological signatures, expanding its neural map, rebuilding itself into something more complex. Whatever that was, it was no longer a creature, it was a process. In the following weeks, reports of similar sightings began emerging, from Colombia, Belize, even along the Gulf of Mexico. Fishermen described translucent shapes gliding beneath their boats, some with faintly human silhouettes. The Panama case had become something far larger, an ecosystem adapting beyond our comprehension. The final leak came from a whistleblower who uploaded footage from inside a containment lab. The camera showed a sealed glass chamber filled with dark fluid. Inside, something floated, vaguely human, its body half-formed, skin shifting in patterns like liquid marble. Wires pulsed around it, connecting to machines that measured oxygen intake and heat levels. Then, as the camera zoomed closer, the being's eyes snapped open. It looked directly into the lens. In that instant, the feed cut to black. Analysts who reviewed the frame-by-frame footage said its mouth appeared to move, forming what looked like a word. Though the sound was mostly static, a single phrase could be heard if slowed down. "You found us." And then, nothing. The next day, all lab access points linked to the leak were purged. Servers wiped. The whistleblower's account vanished. But deep in the static of that final recording, faint pulses remain, coded signals repeating at regular intervals. When converted into visual data, the waveform forms an eerie pattern. 5 symmetrical figures connected by curved lines, like a network, a system, a colony, and it's still transmitting. As night fell again over the jungle, the sound of insects returned to dominate the air. But something was different. The soldiers stationed near the cave now reported a faint hum, like static electricity vibrating through the soil. Their compasses spun wildly, and their radios crackled with garbled whispers that seemed to form words only when no one was directly listening. "It's awake," one soldier muttered under his breath, staring into the darkness beyond the trees. The military ordered all civilian movement within 5 miles of the site restricted. Locals who tried to approach were turned back by armed patrols. Yet rumors still spread, about strange footprints found by a creek, about livestock drained of blood, but left intact, and about lights that glowed green for a moment before vanishing into the horizon. Inside the government facility in Panama City, the footage of the creature was being analyzed frame by frame. Each moment revealed something new, something more horrifying. The growths on its body were no longer random. They appeared to be developing into functional appendages, like limbs adjusting themselves to an unfamiliar gravity. The entity wasn't mutating. It was evolving, rapidly. One biologist, reviewing the latest thermal scans, noticed something chilling. The creature's core temperature was rising, but not due to heat. It was producing energy, as if its biology had found a way to generate its own source of power. "This isn't evolution," he whispered to a colleague. "It's adaptation at a rate that shouldn't be possible." When authorities tried to contain the cave entrance again, the excavation equipment failed. Batteries drained within minutes. Cameras refused to record. Even hardened concrete barriers began to crumble overnight. The area was soon declared a restricted biological anomaly zone, but a few curious explorers still snuck in, and none of them were seen again. Meanwhile, anonymous footage began appearing online, showing strange flashes near the Panama River and floating shapes just below the water's surface. The videos were blurry, distorted, but they all shared one terrifying consistency: the same dark, shifting form with too many limbs, moving slowly against the current. One fisherman, trembling in an interview, said he saw something crawling on the riverbank under the moonlight. He described a humanoid shape dragging itself forward with new appendages that didn't belong to anything known on Earth. "It was growing while I watched," he said, his voice shaking, like it was learning how to walk. Not long after, a small research drone was deployed over the site. Its last transmission showed an image that would haunt anyone who saw it: a faint silhouette standing upright near the cave entrance. Its eyes reflected the drone's infrared beam for a split second before the feed cut to static. The signal never returned. The military's next move was silence. All footage, files, and samples were classified. Scientists were reassigned. Reports vanished. The cave was sealed off completely, and the entire area around the Panama forest was declared unsafe for entry due to unstable terrain. Officially, nothing unusual was ever found, but the locals knew better. They claimed that at night, when the fog rolled down from the mountains, a faint glow could still be seen beneath the surface of the river, like eyes staring upward from the deep. One villager captured an image from afar: a pale, elongated hand reaching up from the darkness of the cave, its skin translucent and slick like something freshly formed. The photo spread briefly online before being scrubbed from every platform. Those who downloaded it reported their devices overheating or crashing mysteriously. Today, whispers about the Panama Entity persist across the internet. Some call it an alien life form. Others insist it's an ancient species that predated humans. Something awakened, not arrived. The strangest part? Every few months, a new sighting emerges from somewhere far beyond Panama, Costa Rica, Colombia, even the coastlines of Florida, each one reporting something eerily similar: a glimmering figure with too many limbs seen crawling out of water before vanishing back beneath the waves. If the videos are real, then what escaped Panama might not be contained anymore. It might be spreading, growing, learning. And if that's true, then the night sky above isn't the only place we should fear looking into. Because maybe, just maybe, something from beneath the earth has finally begun to rise.